Good morning, dear students. So, today we are going to learn about the lines and angles. Okay. First, we are taking introduction of this lesson. Okay. So now we are going to start from point. What is a point? How we can use a point? A point is used to describe some location or some positions. Okay. Suppose in your phone you can see their Google Map. Suppose you are going for a tour. What do? You open that map and you search there where is your location and where is the destination location. After that you can see their blue dot. You can see their blue dot. What is that dot? That dot is nothing but a point. Okay, so this is the uses of point. This is called point. We are using a point to describe some location, some positions. Okay, now line. What is a line? Line. This is called line, and it has two arrows. We can extend both direction of line. We can extend both direction of line. It has two arrows, and we can represent many points. We can represent many points on line. You can see here many points. Okay, so this is a line. Next one is a line segment. Next one is a line segment. Line segment. What is a line segment? You can see there when we take this part. When we take this part PQ, we call it line segment because this is a major part of this line. This is a major part of this line and it has two endpoints. It has two endpoints. We cannot extend both the direction. Okay, it has two endpoints. Okay, so this is called line segment. Next one is a ray. Next one is a ray. Ray means this is a ray. It has a starting point. You can see here it has a starting point only and we can extend only one direction. Only one direction. Okay, we can extend only one direction. This is a ray. Okay, dear students. Next angle. Next one is a angle. Next one is angle. So dear student, what is angle? When two lines and two line segment, two rays meet at common initial point, so we get angles. You can see here, this is a line. Okay, this is a line. When meet another line with a common initial point, you can see here is the common initial point, right? So angle formed here 1, 2, 3. These are all angles forming with two lines meet with a common initial point. Okay, and next one is line segment. This is one line segment. This is another line segment. Okay, and these two line segment meet with a common initial point here, right? So angle is formed here. Okay, we call it angle. Next two rays. You can see here this is two rays. Okay, this is two rays meet with common initial point here. So this is angle. Okay, this is angle, and we call it arms. We call it arms. We call it arms of the angle or sides of the angle. Okay, and this is the vertex of the angle. What is this? This is the vertex. This is the vertex of the angle. Okay, so this is called angle. Okay, next we are moving on types of angles. Okay, let's see, we are moving on types of angle. Types of angles. Types of angles. Okay, first one is acute angle. First one, acute angle. First one is acute angle. Acute angle means whose measure is more than 0 degree and less than 90 degree is called as acute angle. Okay, so this is acute angle. This is acute angle because its measure is less than 90 degrees, so we call it acute angle. And other examples of acute angle: 70, 30, and 35. These are all examples of acute angle. Okay, dear students. Okay, so now next one is right angle. Right angle. Right angle means whose measure is exact 90 degree is called as a right angle. You can see here, this is a right angle. This is a right angle. This is right angle. But do remember, dear students, we cannot use this symbol for right angle because right angle having a special symbol. Which is a special symbol? You can see here. This symbol we can use for right angle. Okay, so it is right angle. Next, the third one is obtuse angle. Third one is obtuse angle. Third one is obtuse angle. Obtuse angle means whose measure is more than 90 degree and less than 180 degree is called as obtuse angle. Okay, you can see here. This is obtuse angle because its measure is more than 90 degree and less than 180 degree. So we call it obtuse angle. Okay, dear students. Okay, it is a acute angle. And other examples of acute angle is 105 and 120, 130. These are all examples of obtuse angle. Okay, dear students. Next, fourth one is straight line angle. Fourth one is straight line angle. Okay, straight line angle. Fourth one is straight line angle. Straight line angle means whose measure is exact 180 degree. Whose angle having exact 180 degree, we call that angle straight line angle. Okay, you can see here, this is a straight line. Okay, this is straight line. This is a straight line. When we measure it, we get 180 degree. Okay, that's why we call it straight line angle. Okay, next, fifth one is reflex angle. Fifth one is reflex angle. Fifth one is reflex angle. Reflex angle means whose measure is 180 degree, more than 180 degree and less than 360 degree. We call that angle reflex angle. You can see here, this is a reflex angle. This is reflex angle. This This is reflex angle. When we measure it, we get more than 180 degree or less than 360 degrees. So that's why we call it reflex angle. Okay. Other example, we can take other examples of reflex angle. Here is the other examples of reflex angle: 210, 250 degree, and 270. These these are all these are all examples of a reflex angle. Okay, dear students, and the last one is a complete angle. Last one is complete angle. Complete angle. Last one is a complete angle. Complete angle means whose measure is exactly 360 degree. We call that angle complete angle. Okay, you can see here. This is the complete angle. This is complete angle. Okay, this is complete angle. This is complete angle. When we measure it, we get 360 degrees. So we call it complete angle. Okay. So these are all types of angles. Now we are moving on complementary angles and supplementary angles. Okay. First one is complementary angles. Complementary angles. Okay. So, dear students, tell me what is complementary angles? Complementary angles means any two angles whose sum is 90 degree are called complementary angles. Let's take some examples. You can see here 45 degree angle A, B, and C, right? And second one is also 45 degree. P, Q, and R. Okay, dear students, you can see here we have two angles. We have two angles whose first one is ABC, angle ABC, whose measure is 45 degree, right? And second one is PQR, whose measure is 45 degree also, right? When we add it, 45 degree plus 45 degree, we get 90 degree. We get 90 degree. These angles sum is 90 degree. So we call it complementary angles because these angles sum is 90 degree. Okay. So we call it these angles are called complementary angles. Okay. Let's take another example. First one is also 45 degree, and second one is 55 degree. Okay, we have two angles again here. When we add it, 45 degree plus 55 degree, okay, we get 100 degree. So we cannot call it a complementary angles because these angles sum is 100 degree. Okay, you can see here these angles sum is 90 degree, so we call it complementary angles. Here you can see these angles sum is 100 degree, so we cannot call it complementary angles. Okay, we can write here these angles are not complementary angles. Okay. Okay, dear students, these angles are not complementary angles because these angles sum is 100 degree and these angles sum is 90 degree. So that's why we call it, these angles are called complementary angles. Okay, let's move on next topic. Next one is supplementary angles. Next one is supplementary angles. Supplementary angles. Okay. Supplementary angles. Supplementary angles. Supplementary angles means any two angles. Any two angles whose sum is 180 degree. What? Whose sum is 180 degree. We call that angles. That angles are called supplementary angles. Okay. You can see here we have first angle whose measure is 95 degree P Q R. Okay, and the second one is A B C. Okay, whose sum is 85 degree. 85 degree. You can see here, dear students, we have two angles here. We have two angles here. First one is PQR. Angle PQR whose measure is 95 degree. Second one is angle ABC whose measure is 85 degree. 85 degree, right? When we add it 95 plus 85 is equal to, we get 180, we get 180 degree. So we call it, these angles are called supplementary angles because these angles sum is 180 degree. That's why we call it, these angles are called supplementary angles. Okay, these angles are called supplementary angles. These angles are called supplementary angles. Okay, let's take another example. (105). First one angle is 105 and second one is also 85. Okay, dear students, you can see here we have two angles. When we add it 105 plus 85, we get 190, right? 190. So we cannot call it, these angles are called supplementary angles because these angles sum is 190 degree. That's why we cannot call these angles supplementary angles. Okay, so these angles are not supplementary angles. Supplementary angles. Okay, dear students, first one is complementary angles whose any two angles whose sum is 90 degree are called as complementary angles, and second one is supplementary angles. You can see here whose sum is 180 degree is called as supplementary angles. Okay.